How to start a row. How to do an angled DC, a left angled DC. We don't stitch into here. Normally your DC would go into a front loop of the row below. In this case, because it's a front loop double crochet, you don't have anything to stitch into, but this is an angled front loop double crochet, so we're going to stitch into this one. So we're basically skipping this stitch and stitching into the front loop. The next stitch, and really that's the only front loop you can stitch into. Oops, I messed up. It's the next front loop that you can stitch into. So now we have an angled one, and remember that because we skipped this stitch, we need to make up for that by stitching our next back loop single crochet into here. Normally that's usually what my instructions will say, or sometimes we'll have the angled one into here and then another one into here. So in this case we might have an angled front loop double crochet into here, and then we also have another front loop double crochet into here, which would have been the normal placement for the second one anyway. And then we might continue with front loop double crochets or whatever the pattern says. So that is a angled front loop double crochet. And now let's say we have a front loop double crochet 2 together. So we might have one here and here. Sometimes we do this for when there's an angle. We do this for an angle usually like around a face or something. So in this case, I'm going to stitch here. Okay, so let's say we have a front loop double crochet 2 together. It's basically a 2 together stitch where it ends in one stitch, but it has 2 posts. So, and sometimes I'll have these where you'll see 2 front loops left, and it's probably an outline of a face or something. And so I want this to be angled, but this is going to come up straight like its normal positioning. And so this one, to be able to angle this way, we have to do these together. So again, we're going to do a front loop double crochet 2 together. So we start our first post. We yarn over and pull through. We have 2 loops left on our hook here. So this is just like a regular 2 together stitch where we're not going to finish the stitch. We're going to do our second of the 2 together posts. So now we're going to yarn over again, and we're going to go into that next front loop. We do the same amount of yarning over we did before, but now we have 3 loops, and now we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3. So that makes the 2 together. These 2 posts are together into one stitch. There's a weird extra loop up here. Anyway, so you'll see there's one stitch at the top here for 2 posts. So that's a front loop double crochet 2 together. Sometimes you'll see, and that's has an X2 on the chart. Sometimes you'll see an XT, so that's a front loop double crochet and treble crochet 2 together. Let's say we wanted to do the front loop double crochet part right here, and then from here I'd use a treble to go into this front loop. If my chart has an XT, that's what I'm doing. I don't want to do a double crochet to reach from here to here because it would just be too stretchy. If you did a really loose one, you could. So in this case, I'm going to do a double front loop double crochet and treble crochet 2 together, which I'll write that as an XT on the chart. So the front loop double crochet post would be here. The treble post would go in here, which is going to be 2 away from where the regular placement would be. Whenever it's 2 away, I'm going to use a treble. Whenever it's 1 away, I'll just use a double, if that makes sense. So this is a front loop double crochet, treble crochet, 2 together, and I don't remember how I abbreviate it, but it's XT on the chart. And the double crochet part won't have any arrows, but the treble part will have an arrow. So basically we're going to start our first post, which is a double crochet. We'll yarn over, stop when you have 2 loops. Now pretend you're just starting a new stitch, but it's a treble. 1, 2, go into the front loop that the treble was supposed to go into, where the arrow is pointing, and then we're going to pull through a couple times. Now we have 3 loops left in the hook. Now we're going to just pull through and end our stitch. So in this case we have, and it's a little loose, but we have 1 stitch with our regular post going straight down and our treble post going at an angle, which it's hard to see right now because we don't have any other stitches posted, but it would be more like that, if that makes sense. And normally after you do a left angled stitch, you've skipped a couple stitches, so now we got to make up for it. So if we bring our thing down, we can see where our front loop double crochet is right here. So we skipped these 2 stitches. We stitched into here, but we still have to make up, because it was a 2 together, meaning 1 stitch. We still have to make up these 2 stitches. So in most cases, I will have you do a back loop single crochet. So remember, we're not going in the same stitch we did our regular front loop double crochet. Well, sorry, it's the post for the 2 together. But I'll have you go into probably the back loops of the next 2 stitches. This back loop is right on top of where the treble post was. So there's that one. And now you can see it really lies at a nice angle here. And it fills in all this space. Usually I'm filling in a bunch of space. And even though you skipped stitches, you can kind of see the background through here, but once it's all laying flat, you really can't see it. So that's a front loop double crochet treble, 2 together with the treble angled left. And now I'll show you one with the treble angled right. And again, these are usually on the outsides surrounding a face. So let's say I was going to go from this stitch and I want to have my front loop post, sorry, my double crochet post here and my treble post here. So in the directions it may say do so many back loop single crochets. So we'll do a back loop and a back loop. And so for usually it'd be the right side of a face maybe where I'm doing this. So what we'll do is, because this front loop is before this front loop, in this case the treble comes first, so I'll yarn over twice for a treble, go back into here, and it's a little funky because your yarn doesn't want to stretch backwards. So we're gonna again do, oh, if I can do this, hold on. Yarn over twice, reach back to this other first front loop, and then we're gonna yarn over and pull through until we have 1 loop left, or sorry, 2 loops. Stop there. Now we do our double crochet post, which is right here, because that's where the stitch was that we were on. And in the directions, if there's no arrow but it says XT, assume the front loop double crochet part of it is going to be directly straight down. So yarn over once for the double crochet. Make sure you're going in the right one. We're going to have one in between that's empty, in between a treble and DC post. So now we do our DC, and we only pull through once, and now we have 3 loops, and now we pull through all of them. And let's just pretend that this last one was a front loop double crochet, so you can kind of see. Now these are going to lay straight up, and those are going to be on an angle. And again, once we get more stitches in, it makes more sense. But in this case, because we ended up on the current stitch. We've already skipped the other stitches here, but we did back loop single crochets to make up for the 2 that we skipped. So our counting of our stitches should be right. And so now sometimes what I have you do is we might do 3 front loop double crochets in the same loop. So let's say we're trying to make a V, and this isn't really the best example, but I just have this project started for another project. So let's say we wanted to do an angled front loop double crochet, then a regular front loop double crochet, and then another angled front loop double crochet, all in the same loop. What I usually do on that last front loop double crochet is instead of going in the loop, I go around the post, because that helps tighten it up and make it pointy. So our first angled front loop double crochet would go into the loop. Usually this might be in the center. And then we have another front loop double crochet, which is straight up and down, that would go in the same loop. And then we'd have another double crochet going in the same loop, but look at the loop, it's getting stretched out. So in this case, when I have 3 in the same loop, the very last one I just do a front post rather than a front loop. So we do our normal, yarn over, but instead of going in the loop, I'm going to go around the whole entire thing like a post. But I'm going to try to make the post go down around these 2 stretched out loops. And you just kind of have to work with the yarn a little bit. So I did a post, and now I'm just going to finish it off like normal. In this case it didn't do, it's way up here, so I'm going to do that one again. That might be the tricky part. When you do your post, try to go around just those bottom 2 stretched out loops. Let's see if I can do this better. There we go. You see how pointy it is now, and it closes up that loop. And so yeah, all I did was I did a front loop double crochet at an angle, another one straight down in the same loop, and then this last one would have like an arrow angled right in that same point. But on some charts it might have a P, and some charts it just might have an X with a arrow. However, if you do the front post around that little bottom stretched out loop part, you get a really good point. So it's optional. If it's too difficult, just do a regular front loop double crochet at the angle. It's just your loop is going to be a little stretched, but you might be able to go in later with like a yarn needle and just kind of cinch it up. So yeah, just a little trick. I think that's all the special stitches for now. So yeah, this will be good for now to show quite a few of my special stitches.